KXVS, KXVS.
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Marcellus.
This is your girl Ronnie.
It's Tim Hawley.
And Al X.
And we're coming at you with the KXVS
Morning Show.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
This is Barbara Barrigan-Parrilla with Delta Flows, a radio show by the Voice of Stockton and Restore the Delta. This is the weekly radio show where we discuss everything Delta related: the environment, water management, water quality, farming, history and culture, public events, recreation, Delta food, and the arts. Tune into Delta Flows on KXVS, the Voice of Stockton, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube at KXVS Radio.
KXVS LP Stockton.
KXVS, the Voice of Stockton live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
Sit in the hot seat and keep it real with Alyssa Love.
Whether you're talking about your love life, past and current friendships, fashion trends, juicy stories, hot topics, food, entertainment, the list is endless.
But what it comes down to,
can you keep it real with Alyssa Love?
Thursday nights starting at 8:05 p.m. on KXVS 92.1 FM, the Voice of Stockton.
KXVS, the Voice of Stockton. It is time for Delta Flows with Barbara Barrigan-Parrilla.
Good morning. This is Barbara Barrigan-Parrilla with Delta Flows, the show on everything about the Delta, from the environment, water management, to farming, the arts, culture, and food. And today we're going to have a fun talk with two family farming members from Greene and Hemley Farms. Virginia Hemley Chhabra and Sarah Hemley are with us today. We're going to talk about pear farming and organic farming in the Delta and cider production. Just to remind our listeners, the Delta is the largest strip of prime farmland in California. There's about 500,000 acres worth of farms within the interior of the Delta. We have some of the oldest family farms in California, and the north end of the Delta in particular has farms that were built between the 1840s and the 1860s. The Delta, the interior of the Delta, is made up of five portions of 5 counties. People in San Joaquin County sometimes forget where the other areas are, but that includes Sacramento County, Yolo County, Solano County, and Contra Costa County. So we're going to say welcome to our guests. Thank you for being here today. And Virginia, I think I'd like to start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of your family farm up in Courtland, and how it was settled, and how did you end up farming pears and apples?
Well, Greene and Hemley started way back in 1850. There were a couple of brothers who came west with hopes and dreams of striking it rich in the gold fields, and ended up buying some land sight unseen when they landed in San Francisco. And family legend has it, as they're coming up the Sacramento River, the boat driver paused for a moment and said, "Well, boys, as far as I can tell, right under us is your land." Everything being in flood and the levee banks not being built up and all of that. One brother stayed and farmed. The other one went to try his fortune in the gold mines, and gold didn't pan out, but farming did.
That's interesting. So how many generations have farmed, and how many, I guess you're the next generation, and are your kids interested in farming? It's a question for both of you.
Well, my brother and I are the 6th generation to be involved in the family business.
Okay.
Sarah's kids are a little young at the moment to know.
I think we're into paleontology now.
Yes, they're 8 and 6. Mine are 14 and 17, and at this moment are very firmly on the, oh, no way, not going to do that. Okay. But at the same age, my brother and I were also very firmly in the, oh, there is no way we're coming back. We are smarter than that.
Okay. All right. And if I remember too, it's a story I think I've heard from your father at some point that he wasn't.
He was also absolutely convinced that he was not coming back to the family farm. You know, that is the only thing we have in common in our educational backgrounds is we went off to do something else.
Right. Right. What's one of the stories that I saw at the website for Greene and Hemley Farms, and you can find those links at the Voice of Stockton website. I believe they're up, and you can see some of the great family photos from the Hemley family of years of farm operations. Your family built one of the first levees in the Delta?
Yes.
Or was involved with that? Can you describe that a little bit?
I think Sarah can tell the story a little better.
Okay.
Was it Josiah?
Yes.
Josiah Greene. Well, his house, like Virginia said, when they found the house, the property was underwater, so they decided the only way that you can prevent that is to build a levee. So we got a bunch of people together, and with horses and what they had, they built the first levee right across the river from Courtland.
Okay, so that's where reclamation began in that area. Were pears the first crops that you grew?
No. The first crop was, and crop is in quotation marks, it was Tule hay.
Okay.
And while the one brother was off not gold mining,
right.
The other one was cutting Tule hay, and he had a sizable fortune piled up until the wildfire came through.
Wow.
And so neither one of them ended up with any money at the end. After hay, cattle is the next logical thing.
Right.
Trees weren't planted for a couple of decades, and there was a lot of experimentation. It's a relatively new spot to people, and they didn't know what would grow the best and what wouldn't. And pears can handle having the high water table better than pretty much anything else, which is why the Delta is one of the world's best Bartlett pear producing regions.
That's amazing. I think people don't realize locally how many pears actually come out. Sarah, maybe you can help describe a little bit. What's pear production like towards the end of July?
Oh, that is Virginia's.
That's right, actually.
Give me a little more, what is pear production like?
Well, what are the volumes like? How many trucks do you run through? How many people do you have working? What's the farming operation like then?
Well, and to keep in mind, we are a solidly middle-sized packing house and farming operation. We are not big. We're not tiny, but we are not big. And at the height of everything, when we are in the deep part of Bartlett harvest and apples are just starting, we have 3 packing lines running for 4 shifts a day. And so, that's 200 to 250 people by the time you get office staff and packing house and forklift drivers and all of that. And that does not include harvest labor.
So in the Delta, you move straight from pear production right into apple production. Is there a break?
There is no break. They overlap for 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the year.
Okay, and so harvesting really then ends at the
tail end of October or beginning of November.
Okay, so it's several months around like this.
It's a long marathon.
Okay.
With a whole bunch of sprints.
So can you describe a little bit your farm operation shifted to organic farming?
We're about 40% organic at the moment.
Okay, and can you talk a little bit about what that process was like? What was the evolution that moved you in that direction, and what's it like for a farming operation to make that transformation?
Some of it was a very logical extension of what we've been doing anyway. Greene and Hemley in particular, but the California pear industry in general is pretty darn soft in their approach. The first IPM project was put together with the help of California pear growers.
Oh, can you explain what IPM means?
IPM is Integrated Pest Management, and that means applying any chemicals or interrupters or anything based on scientific measurements as to where your pressures are and what's needed, rather than just saying, I need to do this every 6 days and spraying by the calendar, which may or may not get you results.
Okay. So you moved in this direction. It was kind of an extension. Is it an easy transformation, though? Some of it was logical.
No,
okay.
no, not easy at all. No. Good way to drive yourself absolutely crazy is to be 100% organic.
Okay.
California is a fantastic place to live, and the Delta is a wonderful place to grow things, but we can grow all sorts of things really well. We can grow pears and apples really well, and there is a broad spectrum of bugs that we also grow really well, and not all of them are the happy type of bugs.
Right.
So it takes effort, it takes time, it takes concentration, it takes a willingness to put in the hours and the research and the focus to stay on top of things, because you're trying to manipulate Mother Nature, and Mother Nature sometimes gets a little twitchy about that.
Right.
As anybody who's ever had an unexplained tomato plant failure in their backyard can,
Right.
you can try to do everything right, but it doesn't always work.
Right. People very often, especially in urban communities, they become a little judgmental, and they think, oh, it's very easy. Why aren't all our farmers just making that transition to organic farming? It's what people want. However, I would take it that there's a lot of cost and a lot of red tape that really makes it difficult for farmers. Are there certain things that could be done that would make the process a little bit easier?
I am sure there are. Specifically organically, it's probably more those third-party suppliers, the ones who produce the inputs and the pest control tools and everything. If they were somehow incentivized to be a little more outside the box in their thinking and a little more proactive in getting things approved. That's the plus and the minus of being in California, is having that extra layer of protection of Cal EPA on top of the US EPA. And it takes longer to get stuff through the system so that we can use it.
Okay. So anything that would kind of maybe expedite it would make it a little bit easier.
Which is it's the perennial business thing, is if
Right.
we could just streamline regulations somehow, and just a little less paperwork.
Right, exactly, which we know it makes things difficult for farmers. It's not just driving the tractor or working out in the fields. There's a lot of planning and a lot of red tape that they experience on many different fronts now. For those joining us right now, this is KXVS, Voice of Stockton, and you're listening to Delta Flows. Our guests today are Virginia Hemley Chhabra and Sarah Hemley from Greene and Hemley Farms, where we're talking about Delta farming, organic farming, and pear production. Now, I understand that the Delta is unique, that we produce one of the first fresh crops of pears every year. Can either one of you describe that cycle to me?
Well, we're in a global commodity. Everything is a global commodity, pretty much. And so as you get into domestic production in the United States, the Delta has the first fresh crop of pears.
Okay. So you start off the rotation
Yes.
throughout the year. And the pears that you grow at Greene and Hemley, you're using for, I guess, fresh sales and cannery?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Bartlett halves and pear and cocktail and things like that is a large part of what we do.
And then, Sarah, you got involved with the family business and started working on cider production.
Yes.
So, where did this interest get sparked for you from?
Well, when you marry into a family like this, you can't help but falling in love with a person and their passions as well. And so when I found out about everything that goes into growing the pears and all the hard work and then the amazing fruit that was coming out of the Delta, and I had no idea any of this was happening. And then I was really into wine, being local to Sacramento and Napa, and thinking, well, if there's great wine, there's got to be a way to make an amazing cider. And so that's kind of how I started into the cider, and it ended up we traveled to England and France and partnered up in Tasmania and found a style of cider that we liked down there.
Okay.
And that's how we got into Hemley cider, was trying to bring this amazing fruit to the market and doing it good, respecting it essentially.
That's you. So you have how many types of cider that you're producing right now?
Right now, so our primary focus was to get one right. So for the last few years, we've developed our original pear cider, and that's Bartlett pears mixed with a little bit of Gala apple in the fermentation, and then finished with Bartlett and Bosc. And then we are now introducing our dry pear cider, which is no back sweetening at all, completely fermented out dry, and then our jalapeno pear cider. And everything in our ciders grown by us is estate grown, unfiltered. It's a different style of cider than is in the United States right now.
So can you explain to me a little bit about how the cider production works, because it's different than, I guess, regular packing house operations and not contained on your property. Can you describe the process for us?
Yeah, it's a lot like making wine. So we have to have a winery license. And it's essentially the keys to making a good pear cider, is which I'm learning mostly about, is one, it starts with the fruit. So it has to be a good quality fruit or you're not going to get a good quality cider. And luckily I have access to my bias, the best pears in the world.
Right.
And so we crush the fruit. We have to grind it right when the Bartletts are the ripest. And then essentially, since we're using a Bartlett pear, which is a dessert fruit, and if you think about a wine and you think about different wine grapes, they have a balance of tannin and acid in it. So we use a little bit of Gala apples to add that acid back into the primary fermentation. It also goes through a malolactic fermentation. And then we age it with a little bit of oak chips to get the tannin back into it. So we have a balanced product at the end. And then the last step we use in the original pear cider is to back sweeten it with another press of fresh Bartlett and Bosc pear, and then it goes into carbonation. So we lightly carbonate it, and then goes into bottles and kegs.
All right. So do you want to, I know you brought some bottles today. Do you want to open it? I think it would be great for people to, well, it makes us thirsty, but it would be great for people to kind of hear, I think, what it sounds like, how effervescent it is, and to be able to take a look at it, the color.
So it is unfiltered. And I am one of those people that when I was growing up, I would take my soda and let it go flat.
Right.
So I prefer a really light carbonation. And what we do with the carbonation is essentially I'm dissolving the CO2 over 24 hours and making tiny little bubbles inside the cider.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful glass. And is that the traditional kind of glass for cider? A rounded glass?
Yeah, that for our cider.
That's absolutely beautiful. Beautiful product. Where are you selling it?
In Stockton, you can get it at Fats Barbecue, and then at Cast Iron Trading. And then in the Delta, you can get it at dropping off delivery today at the Delta's Farmers Market, and then the new Steamboat Landing that's open, Courtland Market, and they've been great supporters of us as well. And then Lodi, you can get it at Cheese Central and Flight Lounge.
Okay. And are you selling retail through stores?
We are.
Stores? Okay.
Yeah, so BevMo's said that is taking us on in certain locations, and so we hope to get that out, especially as we release our 2 new labels.
That's terrific. So another question is, I understand that what the actual bottling or the actual process of making the cider happens in San Joaquin County?
Yes, in Lockford.
Okay. So the fruit actually goes there, and that's where the production happens?
And that's where I make it.
Okay. So it really is a truly original product.
Yes, we found that we have to do everything ourselves. The process that we're doing is different than wine, it's different than beer, and it's different than cider that's being made in the U.S. as well. So it's been a wonderful learning curve and a really great challenge. And at the end of the day, it tastes awesome. So I can always go in and drink and make my days better.
I think our listeners don't realize, but I think when this country was founded, people were drinking really hard apple ciders and hard fruit ciders. It wasn't a beer-drinking country.
Well, Johnny Appleseed was a real guy, and
Right.
he went around planting seeds for cider. And George Washington drank cider every morning. Thomas Jefferson had his own orchards. Cider was the beverage of America. So this Thanksgiving, when you're drinking, you should probably have a cider if you want to be really authentic. Plus, they're awesome.
Okay, sounds good.
And maybe one from the Delta. Just I might know where to get some.
I think that sounds. I think that sounds about right. I wanted to ask you a question about, which is a hard question, a topic we don't always like to dwell on it on this show, but your family farm is at ground zero for the Delta Tunnels project.
Yes, we very much are. The 3 outtakes that are currently planned, and I call them outtakes because they are not intakes, they are outtakes.
Right.
The northernmost one would take out a pear orchard that we have farmed for a couple of generations. It is not ours, but it is owned by extremely close family friends. And the middle outtake would take out an apple orchard that we pack the fruit from. Again, not ours, but owned by our neighbors and very close family friends. And then the southernmost outtake has been moved a little bit north from where it originally was. Where it originally was, it was going to take out my parents' house and part of the packing house. Mm-hmm. Now, my parents' house was built by my grandmother's grandfather. So, it's been there for a while.
Right.
And even moving that outtake farther north, that still puts the third cut into Highway 160, which is our main driveway in and out. And it does become tricky to pack fruit and ship fruit if you can't get trucks in or out of your facility.
Yeah, and that is a real concern. I mean, people they have not resolved what the implications are of construction and the impacts on family farms and interruptions to things like water supply, which
Exactly.
you need for farming. And of course, there are all the air quality issues. Can you just kind of describe for our listeners, what does this do to farming operations for like long-term planning? Does it make it difficult? Does it change?
It makes it very difficult. Bartlett pears are a little different from most other tree crops in that it takes them a while to get up to full production. Most orchards, kind of 20 to 30 years is what you're thinking of, particularly if you're thinking of stone fruit, peaches or nectarines. That's kind of the life of the orchard. There isn't a farm in the Delta that doesn't have some trees on it somewhere that are over 100 years old.
That's amazing.
I mean, Bartletts last for forever. So your timeline horizon is a little bit different. And the 10 to 15 years of construction, that's when you really get the orchard settled in and you've got something mature that you can work with. So it's tough to plan anything if you don't know if there's going to be anything you can do even in the meantime.
Right.
Never mind afterwards.
Right, and of course, all that disruption from to water and to farming could have a horrible impact on historic crops.
Well, on historic crops and on historic communities. Right. I mean, most of our workforce is local, and local in the, if they're not born here, well, their kids were born here, and everybody goes to local schools, and, our biggest zip codes are Clarksburg and Walnut Grove and Courtland and, Galt and a little bit in Lodi and Stockton, and, it's people who their lives are here. And you can't have rural communities without rural people, and you can't have rural people without rural businesses.
Right. I think you've hit it right on the head, and have said it in a way that people don't think about how those impacts kind of move down. One of our concerns has been advocating for the farm worker communities that are tied to farm operations like yours, because for some people with different farms, they stand to lose not only their jobs but their housing and their water supply. And that's not something you just simply recover for. It's kind of not built into the mitigation plans.
Exactly. There is no way to mitigate for the loss of a town. Yes. There just isn't.
No, there isn't. But you do keep going, and that's one of the reasons why we are so glad that you came to speak with us today, because we think that one of the ways to actually best overcome the project is for people throughout the Delta region to embrace their local businesses, embrace events and local products and product production, and to support those through purchases. In the few closing minutes that we have, people down here don't always all know about the Pear Fair. And I think it would be. I know there are people in Courtland who perhaps would like to run and hide during Pear Fair weekend. We even get a little tired from working up there ourselves, but it is a great festival, and it'd be great if you both could describe it. I think for our listeners, you want to go ahead, Sarah?
I actually really love the Pear Fair. It's just community run. Everybody in the community gets involved. We get months of planning and meeting together and drinking together, and then coming together to put on this local event that brings people from Stockton and Sacramento and the Bay Area. And every time, if I mention Courtland when we go out to taste cider, that's the only thing people remember us. Oh, I've been to the Pear Fair. Okay, so now you know.
It's held every year, the last
Sunday in July.
Right, and it starts in the morning. I think there's a breakfast and a run, and
then a pancake breakfast.
Right.
It's all goes to charity and the town association, and there's all pear food and pear pies and
pear cider.
Yes, pear cider, yes. And I have to tell you, as an urban dweller, one of the things that I've appreciated and loved about that fair is when my daughter was young, or younger, I felt comfortable letting her and a group of girls kind of just go wild up there. It's a safe environment. Family environment.
Very small town. Everybody looks out for everybody else, and very much if your child steps 1 foot out of line, there are 15 grown-ups to
exactly
call you on your phone.
Yeah, pretty much.
Exactly. So it's a safe environment. It's fun. There's great food, great activity. I think you have probably one of the best rocking mariachi bands I've ever heard that plays every year towards the end of the festival. And it's packed with people from all over, from the Bay Area. But again, sometimes I think our urban communities around the Delta don't quite make the connection with what's internal. And one of the things, too, that I absolutely love to do when I'm up there, I have a collection of prints, which I saw on your website. I have the old pear packing prints.
Oh, cool.
That I've bought from up there over the years at my home. You have some of those. I guess
we have some of them in our office. Well, we have some old labels and some old photographs, and the River Delta Historical Society always has an excellent display of things from the 1870s and packing labels from something from 1910, and then something from it changed radically when it got to 1934. Right. And it's a good reminder of where we came from. And kind of solidifies everybody's belief that this is a good place to live. This is a good place to be, and we'd like to do what we can to keep it that way.
So I'd like to just close off and thank you both for coming to talk with us today, and to remind our listeners that the Hemley cider is available at Cast Iron Trading, Fats Grill here in Stockton. Other locations which you can find at their website for Hemley cider. You should also check out the Greene and Hemley website. There are beautiful photos of the historic house and the history of farming operations and some of the label artwork that we were just discussing. You can also find links for all of this at the KXVS Voice of Stockton website. This is Delta Flows. We thank you for listening, and we'll see you 10:30 next Friday.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.